I've turned on the scale. It's in grams. Taking a nice clean and dry whey boat. Gonna put that on the scale and make sure you zero it. Now you have some copper oxide. Have a scoopula. Just gonna scoop 1.5 grams into that whey boat. I've transferred 1.5 grams into that whey boat. Now just gonna have to take it over to the 150 milliliter beaker. Taking the whey boat, I'm just gonna dump all that in, being careful to keep that all in the beaker. Now you see there's kind of some left over. That's why we have a wash bottle. Just going to take the wash bottle, just going to put water in that until there is no more residue of the copper oxide. The whey boat is now clean of residue. You can see there's still water, but there's no more of the black solid on there. I would say that took about 5 rinsings, but it will vary. This is what the 150 milliliter beaker looks like now that there has been some water added from the rinsings. The next step is to add 15 milliliters of the distilled water using a 25 milliliter graduated cylinder. We're just going to add that to the same 150 milliliter beaker. I've added approximately 15 milliliters of the water to the graduate cylinder. I'm just going to pour that in. This is just 1 molar sulfuric acid. This is the strength we need it at. Here is a 100 milliliter graduated cylinder and a clean pipette. Now we're just going to measure exactly 30 milliliters of the sulfuric acid using this pipette into the graduated cylinder. Okay, we have the 30 milliliters of acid measured. Now we're just going to put this carefully into the 150 milliliter beaker where the copper is. Just going to start stirring. I've been stirring that with my glass stir rod for about 1 minute. You can see that it's starting to turn blue, which is good, but it still needs to be stirred some more because it's still pretty dark. I've been stirring it for about maybe 2 more minutes, and it's gotten lighter. It might be hard to tell based on the camera lens, but visibly in real life, I can say that this is a lot lighter and it's very clear, which is exactly what we want. At this point, we can say that it has reacted fully. It might be easier as well if you do the stirring well against a white paper towel, just because it's easier to see the color then. We're at the scale again, and here in front is just a bottle of magnesium metal that is a very fine powder. It will react very well, and it's what we're going to use. We're going to weigh out 0.7 grams of this at the scale with another whey boat that is clean and dry. You can see there is 0.7 grams of the magnesium. It's this. We're just going to take this and dump this into the beaker. And like before, we're just going to have to rinse that. You can see that I've just rinsed the whey boat with the distilled water and there's no more residue. And here you can see it's reacted some. It would be ideal to have one group member do the rinsing and the other just making sure you're constantly stirring the beaker. It has stopped fizzing when I stir it, and I've measured 25 milliliters of distilled water in the same 25 milliliter graduated cylinder as before. I'm just going to pour that in and stir. This is the beaker after about 2 minutes of stirring. Here to the left, I have my Erlenmeyer flask set up with a funnel and some filter paper inside. I just put the filter paper in as the diagram and instructions indicated. I made sure to put some distilled water there so it stays tight against the funnel. we're trying to get the solid copper separated from the liquid around it. So we're just going to pour this into the funnel, letting the liquid drip into the flask, making sure not to put more than 2/3 of the funnel's capacity at a time to prevent any spillage or other problems. Here is the beaker now that I've poured most of the liquid into the funnel and the flask. You can see that there's some still left at the bottom. That's perfectly okay. We're just trying to save ourselves some work here. There's not excess liquid when we're heating this. You can see that there's some solid there. We definitely want to make sure we keep that. And we're just now waiting for the liquid to drip out and we can properly get the solid back into the beaker. See now that the liquid has mostly been gone and is not left in the funnel. Have one member of your group take hold of the flask and dump the liquid in the nearest waste container, and have the other member of your group just pick up the funnel. We're not going to throw anything of this out. Okay, I have my funnel in one hand with the filter paper inside, and with the other hand, just have your DI wash bottle and rinse the solid back into the beaker. Taking the copper mixture to the hot plate, we're just going to try to heat it for 2 reasons. First is to get rid of that excess water. The second is to oxidize it. Stir frequently and constantly with the glass stir rod while this mixture is on the hot plate, and have it set to a very high temperature. You can see that the water has started to boil now. At this point, you need to be just really careful and making sure you're stirring at all times, just to prevent any sort of bumping. So I've been stirring it, and most of the water seems to have boiled away. It's a little bit hard to tell on camera, but you can see at the bottom, it's both a powdery solid, and that solid is very dark. At this point, you still want to keep it on the heat, because you want to keep it on the heat until all of that solid is a nice dark black. Make sure that you're focusing on trying to scrape away the stuff on the sides, and be very careful to not touch the glass because it is quite hot. At this point, to my eye, it looks very black, so it's ready to take off the heat. I've also scraped the sides to the best of my ability. Now, because this glass is really hot, you're going to have to make sure you use beaker tongs. Be very careful and try to hold it very sturdily and make sure you don't drop it. Additionally, there is a wire cooling pad. This is just to prevent any sort of thermal shock to the beaker, as it is moving from a very hot surface to a cool surface, and we don't want it to crack. I've taken my beaker off the hot plate using my tongs. I've made sure to turn off the hot plate, and now I'm just letting the beaker sit and cool, and the contents inside cool as well. At this point, you want to let it cool until it's safe to be touched. Now, to test that, you don't just stick your fingers right on there. You have to keep them just hovering above. You're just trying to gauge the heat level without burning yourself. My beaker is now cool enough to be touched, and I am going to weigh it. Here we have the third and final clean dry weigh boat. I'm just going to put that on the scale and press our 0 button. So I've scraped all of my solid from the beaker onto my weigh boat, and now looking at the measurement, you can see it's 1.1 grams. Give you a hint, this probably isn't the best result. So see if you can get a better result than me and figure out why this isn't such a good result.